Angela, can you hear us?
Yes, loud and clear.
I do. Oh,
Okay, let us know if you can't hear us, but I'll assume that you guys can. Okay, should be good, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Is everybody here that RSVP'd?
You can tell by the lunches.
Oh, yeah.
I still should be coming.
Oh, yeah, I think two of those numbers. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll go ahead and get started.
Yeah.
So Jamie and Angela, thanks for being on Zoom. And thank you all for taking some time out of your workday to join us. My name is Tori. This is Alex. Hi. And today we'll be reviewing your 403B. And then for the first half, second half, we'll be going through financial wellness. And for our series of workshops, we'll go through half financial topics and other half other fun like burnout prevention, nutrition in the workplace, like those kind of topics.
Yeah.
To make it fun and interactive.
Yeah, so today's one of the more finance related topics, and then the next one will be a little bit more fun and wellness related, but I feel like both are very important to overall wellness. I feel like you can't have true health and wellness without financial wellness, because it's a big part of it.
Yes, and we're preaching to the choir here because you all are striving toward that mission already.
Yeah.
In your folders, and you guys can keep reading, of course. In your folders, on the left-hand side is a flyer of just our team, and then our QR code that has the link to schedule a meeting with either of us. And then on the right side are the slides with a notes page. Do you all have pens? Okay, perfect. Where you can take some notes, jot down any questions. We'll leave questions till the end. And then behind the slides is a budget worksheet. So you can completely personalize this, and we'll talk a little bit about this as we get to that section, but you can itemize each kind of like line item of expenses and income and all of that. And then on the bottom are our business cards. So if you ever need to get in touch with us, our email and our phone numbers are there too. So to start, just a reminder, a little bit, oh, this isn't working. A little bit about our team. Okay, so there's myself and Alex, your two main advisors. Junior Achievement has hired us on to help you with your 403B with Principal. On your 403B, helping you to construct your portfolio and manage it, in addition to other areas of your plan that you might need help with, like saving for college, budgeting, paying off debt, saving for retirement, and navigating your other benefits as well. So use us as you'd like. And then Brandon is our client services lead. Do you want to add anything?
Just that normally for our financial planning services, it's a value of like $100 a month, and you guys are getting that completely free. So would recommend taking advantage of it.
Yeah, compliments of JA SoCal.
Yes.
And then the best resource that I think would benefit all of you is our website. So on here, you can schedule a meeting if you need to. You can access our social media pages, and then also our YouTube that has easy and accessible, fun to watch, I think, 2 to 3 minute videos on different topics. So there's one on 403Bs, there's one on rebalancing, different types of financial topics there. And then also we have various webinars that you're more than welcome to come to also. We have our blog and our newsletter that we send out every month that I think you're getting already. So that is a resource there. And then a quick review of your 403B. So your 403B is through Principal. I know a lot of you have started adding to it. And to start, you can save, if you're under 50 years old, up to $20,500 a year into your 403B. So you can save into it on a pre-tax basis. So saving money in taxes, you're able to write off your contributions from your taxable income for the year that you contribute up to 20,500. Or you can save into a Roth 403b, which means that you are paying taxes in the year that you contribute, but for the rest of your life, you don't have to pay any more taxes when you take it out. So it really depends on where your tax bracket is now, where you think it will be in the future to determine which 403b type to save into right now. And it could change. Like under the 403b, you have a traditional 403b pot, and you could have a Roth 403b pot. It's all under the 403b, and you can save into either one. You can also save into both at the same time if you want to do both. But we'll really want to get down like where your taxes are now and where they're projected to be in the future to make that decision together. If you're over 50, you can add up to 27,000 in the year that in 1 year. So that of course comes out of your paycheck, and you can split that up between 12 months. You can't do, unfortunately, one-time contributions. It all has to come out of your paycheck. And of course, you can change your deferrals monthly, and they can be stopped at any time. And then I know a couple of you have old retirement accounts from other employers. So if you've rolled them out to an IRA already, or if they're still in the other 403b or other 401k, you can roll them into your new 403b, just to consolidate it, make it easier to manage, just get one statement. And you have really great, and I'll review them in a little bit, but you have really great investment options through the 403b through JA SoCal as well.
And those rollovers are tax-free, and there's no cost for doing a rollover as well.
Yeah, correct. And then one more thing about that is when they're with an old employer or in an IRA, they're often unmanaged by an advisor, or like you're usually not working with an advisor on it. So by bringing it over here, you can work with Alex or myself and put a game plan into place there. Employer contributions. So qualified matching contributions from JA SoCal is 100% up to the first 4% of what you put in. So that's, if you're putting in, let's say, $100 a month, which is $1,200 for the year. And let's say, for instance, that is 4% of your salary, you'll get a match of exactly $1,200 from JA SoCal into your 403b. And that vesting schedule is immediate, so you don't have to be working for a certain period of time to take, I guess, all of the matching contributions. Discretionary contributions are something that JA SoCal can opt into at the end of the year and is not consistent. So this is the main area that is applicable to you guys.
And then as like financial planners, one of the easiest pieces of advice that we can give is saying yes to money that's free money that's offered to you. So that's kind of what that is, as long as you're willing to commit to savings on your own. JA SoCal is essentially giving you money into your account that will help later down the road with retirement. So it's kind of like the easiest financial advice I can give is don't turn down free money.
Yeah. If it fits into your plan. Yeah. So your investment options through Principal's 403b with JA SoCal is you have 39 mutual funds and ETFs. So really quick, the difference between mutual funds and ETFs is mutual funds are actively managed by usually 5 to 6 different portfolio managers in each fund. So it's a little bit more active in management. ETFs are passive, so it tracks an index, like the S&P 500, the top 500 companies in the US. It also tracks other indexes. So there's not a lot of trading that happens. So it's usually a little bit lower cost. But usually we want to have a combination of both, because some years active management does better than passive. Other years passive management does better than active. So depends on the year. We can't really, we don't have a crystal ball. So it's good to have a combination of the two. And these over here are the asset classes that are available through the 403b. So it's really important to have a diversified mix of different asset classes. Because for example, if you only have international stocks or holdings and the international stock market goes down, that is kind of putting your eggs all in the international companies, and that might negatively impact your portfolio. So, I mean, we don't have control over whether or not the international stock market goes down. So it's good to have a mix between all the different asset classes, depending on your time horizon and your risk tolerance. So that's one thing that Alex and I can help with, is helping you determine which ones you should be exposed to based on your time horizon and your goal. Another thing is you have different types of investment companies available to you. So these are the companies that have both these ETFs and mutual funds. So American Funds has mutual funds, for example, BlackRock has ETFs. And so these are different types of investment companies that might have different philosophies or styles. So it's good to have a mix of different investment companies as well. Oh, and then of course, we also have socially responsible investments available. If that's something that's important to you, we can do half and half, or we can do a full portfolio with socially responsible investments. There are a lot of really great options through the Principal 403B. Okay, actually, any questions on the 403B at this time? Pretty good understanding of it? Okay, great. Yeah.
How often should you, I mean, it's my understanding that you kind of set it and forget it, but like how often should you be revisiting and like looking to change up between the mutual funds and ETF mix?
Yeah, I think at least once a year, just to sit down and review it and make sure that it aligns with your goal and your time horizon. There's also something called rebalancing that is good to do at least once a year as well. So if there's one asset class that outperforms the other ones, and maybe you're overly allocated to that asset class, we can sell some of those shares and buy the other asset classes at a low to get back to the original split that you started with. I suggest that at least once a year.
And is that a matter of like making an appointment with you and helping us guide, or we just do it on our own?
Yeah, I actually, do you know if Principal has automatic rebalancing?
They might have automatic rebalancing, like a button that you can check out or check on the website when you're setting up your account. So oftentimes that will be like an annual, like January 1st type of rebalancing. But I would recommend setting an annual appointment with Tori or myself to review, because it's more so, usually we're not going to make changes, just based off of the performance. We're going to make changes more so based off of like your goals have changed. Maybe you're getting closer to retirement, things of that nature. So it's good to kind of check in to see like if your goals in your life have changed, and if that means that we should make a change to your 403B.
Yeah.
There's basically like a third-party company that is actually monitoring the funds inside of your 403B to make sure that all of them are, as far as the market of investments goes, are top, class funds. So, some funds will do well some years, some funds will do better in other years, but there is one line of like kind of monitoring to make sure that they're all like top end funds for their asset classes. So that's happening kind of behind the scenes. But yeah, meet with us once per year to see if we need to make any changes.
Yeah, and then I'll double check on the rebalancing with Principal.
And just a reminder too, because I know there's a mix of some people in here who are already enrolled and some people who are thinking about it. And you can join up at any time in the year, and you can make changes at any time in the year. But for the first year of our contract, we wrote into it a one time per month sort of cycle of accepting changes. So in the month leading up to the first of the next month, anything that you register for will take effect on the first day of the next month coming up.
Yeah.
And the sign up process is very simple. If you want to just go ahead and do it online, it's in kind of like the packet that you got, and on the first page shows you the website that you can go to sign up online. Or you can schedule an initial consultation with us and we can kind of walk you through that process.
Yeah. Awesome. Any other questions about the 403B? Okay, great. So we'll go ahead and start with our financial wellness presentation here. So why we're starting with financial wellness and why it's important to be financially well is just to understand your money so that you can step into your power when it comes to money, to be able to earn, spend, save money in a way that's most meaningful to you and that helps you reach your goals. So first, it starts with identifying your goals. So you can even have different accounts, different pots of money for each goal as well. Within different banking systems, you can, or, like for example, with Chase or a credit union, you can have multiple savings set up for different goals. And then also with investment accounts, there's no limit to how many investment accounts you can have for each goal as well. But the first step is identifying what they are and how much they might cost with their shorter term goals, how much they might cost within the next 3 or 5 years. If they're longer term goals, we can account for inflation and project that out to see how much you would need to fund those goals. So first step is thinking about what you yourself value and what is most important for you and your family to accomplish.
And then Tori and I have access to software where you can actually plug in your goals and we can kind of help you track your progress towards them over time. Because I feel like that's one of the hardest parts is like you write down your goals, but then it's hard to stay organized and track your progress towards it. So we're able to automate a lot of that.
Yeah, and then the automatic savings is helpful too, even if it's just like $25 a month into one pot, you can consistently save, even if it's once a week or once a month. That's a good way to go about that as well. So we'll talk about the 3 steps to financial freedom. The first one is cash savings. The second is asset accumulation. And the third is wealth transfer. So first being cash savings, money to be used for emergencies. And we'll talk a little bit first about just the US personal savings rate on average hovers around 8%. Usually the kind of goal savings rate is, and again, it's dependent on your own situation, your own budget, your own income, but is usually between 10 to 20% of your overall gross salary to be siphoned away for your various goals that you identified on the previous slide. So if you need help kind of with this and trying to think about what is a healthy savings rate for your situation and your goals, Alex and I can help you create a plan for that.
And our general kind of like thought process with like how much you're saving is to start small and then let a couple months go by. And if you're not feeling any financial difficulty, up it, and then keep doing that until you kind of reach your limit.
Yeah, and then to get an idea of your inflows and your outflows on a monthly basis and kind of just track where things are going in terms of your spending and income and trends. There's a budget worksheet in here. I'd suggest maybe taking like 10 or 15 minutes to go through each of these categories and write down what they are monthly, what the costs are annually, just to get an idea of where your income is going. And I really believe that the more information that you have about your habits, the better that we can leverage it to make it do what you want and to kind of regain power over your income and your spending. So there are a lot of different digital ways to track. I know some of you track on Excel, and some of you might write down your expenses, but another good way to do it is digitally. And there are a whole bunch of different great resources and apps like Mint or QuickBooks, or Cetera has AdviceWorks that you can do it on as well, where you can link all of your accounts and it'll run reports on different weeks of the month, what your spending looked like, what your income looked like, and provide you information on trends so that you can just not really make any meaning of it, but just look at where things are going, how much you usually spend on different things that you need to spend money on. So you can fill that out later, or you can do that now too if you'd like. But this is a good way to a good starting point to start with a budget / spending plan. Anything like that?
Just in general, like I think the best way to go about this is usually to like use one of those apps where they can track your spending and connect, your accounts and let a couple of months go by where they can accumulate like your data. So you can look back and say, okay, for the last 3 months, these are my spending trends, and then set your budget according to that. Because a lot of times if you just go straight to your budget, we don't always realize exactly, what our true expenses are. We kind of need to look back and see the automatic tracking of it. So
Yeah, or if you're like, I'm gonna spend $500 on groceries, but you actually usually spend $1,000 a month on groceries, it's a little bit, you're undershooting it and then you feel like stressed. So you want to get a good idea of what your actual spending is usually like. And then for paying off debt versus saving, we want to have a good balance between paying off debt, of course, and investing. So you can do both things at the same time. We just want to look at the law of interest rates, where if you owe money, having a high interest rate is, I guess, worse than having a lower interest rate if you owe money. If you're saving money, if you have a higher interest rate, that means more money is flowing in. So that's a little bit better. So when we're looking at which types of debt to pay off, we want to prioritize debt with higher interest rates. So debt like on credit cards, usually that's around like 15, 20, 25%, depending on your credit score. So that is usually the type of debt that you want to prioritize. Paying off over, let's say, investing at a rate of 8%. So if you, have that higher interest debt, you might want to, reroute all of your savings ability toward that first, and then save and invest. But this is completely dependent on your situation. So, it's kind of like a general rule of thumb, but we'll want to make that more specific to you.
yeah, and then on like the good side or better types of debt, we think of things like mortgages and even like your car loans and things like that. Those will usually have an interest rate of 3 to 6%, etc. So those are usually not as urgent to pay down as like credit cards. And if you have those debts outstanding, you can still invest, for the long term at the same time, because you should earn a higher rate from your investments than those low debts growing for you. So kind of like if you're looking at where do I put my money, start with the thing with the highest rate, whether it's debt or investment, and work your way kind of down. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I know a lot of our clients' initial goals is to pay off their home before they retire. And while that's a really great goal, usually your mortgage is the cheapest debt that you can have. So it might make more sense to take the money that you would save additionally toward your home and invest it elsewhere to get a higher rate of return. Plus you can write off your interest from your mortgage from your taxable income. So for risks having to do with cash savings, there are 3 main types. One is market risk, second is inflation, and third is loss of income. So what this demonstrates here is inflation. You can see the cost of a movie ticket from 2000 to 2018 almost doubled over the course of that 18-year period. And of course, now it's way more than that. And you're probably feeling inflation a lot, especially now. And so right now, inflation is at about 9% from last year to this year. 9% is how much the average, costs of goods and services have increased over 1 year. So that's kind of one risk that you want to manage if you have money in the bank that is sitting in a savings account growing at 0.01% or so. So if you have money that is accessible and safe, you want to have that there for your emergency fund because of the accessibility of it. But anything above and beyond that, we want to have invested so that you're outpacing inflation, which usually on average is around 3%, 4%. So that's where we would want to find an investment that gets more than 3 or 4%, which is usually in the stock market for your future goals, or property or bonds as well. So that's inflation risk. Market risk is if you have money that is siphoned off for specifically a goal that you want to accomplish 2 or 3 years out. It might not make sense to put it into the stock market because of market risk. As we've seen this year so far, the stock market is down 20% and the bond market is down 10%. So if you want to accomplish a specific goal in the shorter term, it might not make sense to put that money in the market just in case another year like this happens and you need to use the money, then you have to take it out and lock in a 20% loss. We don't want that to happen. So that's why we want to have different pools of money for specific goals and expose it to the appropriate amount of risk, if any. And then the last risk is loss of income. So there's loss of income with disability. And I know that you have a healthy disability policy through JA SoCal and also through the state. When it comes to passing away or replacing income, if you or a significant other were to pass away, if you have children, there are 2 types of life insurance. One is term, which you have 2 times your salary through JA SoCal, and then there's also whole life policies. Term is usually less expensive because you have it for a certain period of time. And usually those periods range from 10-year term to 30-year term and everywhere in between, in usually 5-year increments. And it's usually less expensive because if you don't use it, so if you don't pass away during that time, and then also with group term when you're working, then you usually don't have anything after that time period or after you leave that employer to take with you. But it does protect you and your family during that period of time. It doesn't build cash value. So again, if you outlive that period, you don't have any equity built up in the policy or anything like that. And then again, that's in place just throughout that term, whether it's 10-year term, 15, 20, 25, or 30-year. And then whole life is a more permanent form of life insurance that you have for the rest of your life. And this is also known as cash value insurance because as you save into it, you have the death benefit that would pass down to your beneficiaries tax-free. But if you don't end up using it, best case scenario, right? You can have access to cash value, which is kind of like equity in the policy that you can access during retirement, or if you feel like you don't need the coverage, maybe your home is paid off or your children are independent now, you can take that money out and then supplement it for whatever else you want to accomplish. And again, that's with you for life.
When you say tax-free, is that separate from the tax limits on the other tax limits on inheritance? Well,
Yeah, it doesn't include that. Yeah, exactly.
That's why life insurance is a very popular vehicle for wealth transfer later down the road to try to avoid paying taxes when you're transferring your wealth. Yeah, one way I like to think of the difference between the two, it's kind of like relating it to like a property. It's kind of term is like the equivalent of renting, and whole life or cash value insurance is like the equivalent of owning the property. So like term, if you're renting, right, you sign a lease, and as long as you make your monthly payments, you're allowed to live in that apartment or place, etc. And then once you leave, you stop paying, but you really have nothing to show for it. You didn't build up any equity. Whole life is a little bit higher price, right? But as you're making your monthly payments, you're also building up an equity in the policy. So, 30 years down the road, you decide, I don't need this insurance policy anymore, right? You'll have some money that you'll be able to get back some equity inside of it. So
yeah, and one is not necessarily better than the other. It depends on your situation and your budget and your needs. So sometimes if you want to have both, you have temporary things to protect, but you also want to have a policy for life that has equity in it. You can do a combination of the two so that you get to the coverage that you need, but you have something for life that you can build up equity within. But it depends on your needs.
and the term life here is free.
Yeah, exactly.
So like everybody's automatically covered?
When you are hired, you're automatically enrolled unless for some reason you elected to opt out, which happened about 5 years ago, so those of us who've been here longer than that, I can look back at records to confirm where you're at. But,
And the JA policy is 2 times your gross salary, 2.5 times gross salary, yeah. So depending on your need, you know, to protect either your income for your family or maybe your home, or depending on how much you want to pass down, that may or may not be enough. So like if 2.5 times your gross salary is enough, then you're good. If you want more, then you would have to get an additional policy.
So for whole life, you said you can end the policy. Is that you can end it after, whether it's like 5 years, 10 years, until the policy's over? Can you just end it at any time?
Yeah, you can usually end it at any time. Usually the cash value has a surrender schedule of about 15 years. And you want to give it time for it to build. Like if you take it out next year, you might not have enough in there to make it super worth paying the premiums.
Yeah.
That was kind of my question, because you keep bringing up the word equity and stuff. So as far as that, because like with a home,
Yeah.
depending on how the market goes, right?
Yeah.
What your equity is, so how do you define then equity for like a whole life?
No, that's a good question. So there's
Yeah.
all different types of
Yeah.
life insurance policies. Sometimes they'll have the cash value invested, kind of like in the stock market, where it might go, the cash value might go up or down the same way that your 403B might, et cetera. Sometimes they'll be attached to fixed rates, where you'll buy a whole life policy and they'll guarantee that your cash value grows at, say, 4% per year, right? And then that'll just be fixed growth for the rest of the time of the policy. So those are the main types, but in general, like different companies have different policies that do different things with the cash value. So like for somebody who's younger, like I like the ones that have the cash value invested, right? Because we can get a lot of market growth over the long run. But for somebody who's maybe already retired, maybe fixed growth for the cash value because they don't have the time for the ups and downs. So different for different policies, but they're typically growing in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. And then the way that Alex and I work just as independent advisors, we have access to all of the different options out there. So we can shop them for you. If you want one that's tied to the market, we can look at the best one for you there. If you want one that's more fixed, we can look at a good one for you there too, and everywhere in between. Any other questions on
The
insurance?
cash value for whole life, can that be used to pay for the premiums?
So yes, it can, but it typically takes probably 15, 20 years to build up enough cash value where you could say, I'm going to stop paying the premiums, and instead they'll just pull that amount from your cash value. But you need to have enough in there that it can survive that for a long time.
Mhm.
So sometimes you can build the policy so that you kind of overpay for the first 10 years or 20 years and then stop paying because you've kind of overpaid at the beginning.
And are the premiums fixed on whole life?
So technically, yes, for a whole life, the premiums are fixed, but what's not on there is the other type of permanent life insurance, which is called universal life insurance. And that's basically, it's very similar to whole life, except you can adjust the premium and has a little bit less guarantees built into it. But for universal life, which is another super popular type of permanent policy, those you can adjust the premium, and those are the type you can kind of customize to work with like kind of your goals. And yeah.
Yeah, that's one way to do it. Another way is if you were to get like a whole life policy that has a fixed payout, or I'm sorry, payment period. So like if you want to just pay until 65 and then be done after, you can do that. And you won't owe any premiums after, and your cash value will just be growing. Like that's part of how the policy is set up.
Yeah.
But usually it's a little bit more expensive because you're like front loading the premiums.
It's pretty common to have a 10 pay type of way to pay for the policy. So 10 years, a 20 pay, and then a pay to 65. Those are like the three most common, other than just monthly, the three most common pay types for life insurance.
Did you have a question?
I did, and you may have already answered, but and you can continue this if we leave JA.
Yeah, so the group term, the 2.5 times your salary is associated with JA. But if you do a supplemental outside of JA, then this goes with you no matter where you're employed. Yeah. Any other
And
questions?
it's not tied to salary, right? It's
Not tied to salary.
And if you buy like $1 million,
Mhm,
you're paying into like, that's your death benefit.
mhm.
If you pass away, you're
wherever you said, as the beneficiary of $1 million tax free.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can, yeah, outside of your employer, you can get as much or as little, or, you know, you can really choose the terms of your insurance policy depending on what you need. Any other questions on life insurance?
Can I ask a technical question?
Yeah.
I just got a question from one of our remote
Oh,
people. Are any of these, just on my phone, are any of these handouts available in a way you can throw in the chat?
I actually don't have a chat on here just because of policies,
Regulations.
but yeah,
Mhm.
but I'll email you
Okay.
and then you can distribute it to everybody else. Cool. I think we have a couple of extra folders too we can leave behind.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll kind of take over here. So 3 steps to financial freedom. We went through cash savings. So that's usually step number 1, making sure you have your budget, making sure you're building an emergency fund, and then making sure you're managing your risks when it comes to cash savings. Asset accumulation is kind of the point in your plan where you start to save for your future goals, right? And really start to build wealth and make smart decisions, invest, all that good stuff. So with asset accumulation, kind of 3 different components of asset accumulation. One is the time component, right? Obviously, it's going to be best to start saving early. The earlier you save, obviously, the more time you have to save. And then when it comes to investments, the more time you have for compounding interest to take effect on your savings. When it comes to asset accumulation and deciding, you know, what type of account, what types of investments you want to do, the time component is a really important part to kind of know. So you usually want to start with like, what is my goal? And then how long from now until I want to achieve that goal? And if that time horizon is a long time horizon, say it's retirement and you're not planning to retire for 20 years, right? That's a very important thing to know when you're planning to save for that goal. It means that you can probably save a little bit less on a monthly basis because you have so much time. And it means you can probably invest a little bit more aggressively to achieve some higher return over the long run. If instead your goal is, maybe it's also to retire, but you want to retire next year, right? Now, all of a sudden your time horizon is much shorter. So you might have to save really heavily, right? To prepare for that upcoming goal. And you might not be able to invest, or you might not be able to invest very aggressively, at least because you don't have as much time on your side. So time, very important component when determining, you know, how you're going to save for future goals.
However, if you don't necessarily have enough time, you can still start and have a big impact on your plan.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And then, so second component is going to be money. And when we're talking about money, it's how much have you saved already and how much are you going to plan to save? So usually when you decide on your goal, you decide it's going to be a goal for 5 years from now, you want to determine how much of your current money you want to allocate towards that goal. Maybe you start with 0, maybe you start with $1,000, whatever it might be. Start with, you know, how much you currently have, so your past dollars. And then you would develop a plan for your future dollars. So say you've done your budget and you've realized that you can save $500 a month. How much of that $500 a month do you want to allocate towards that goal, you know, in 5 years, right? And so determining how much you're going to allocate towards that goal. And then next question is where are those future dollars going to go, right? Am I going to go into a retirement account? Am I going to go into my savings account? You know, it depends on the goal there. So determining what we're going to be doing with our current money and our future money. And then lastly is the rate of return. So the rate of return is basically how fast our money is going to grow during that time period. So with certain types of accounts, you know, your savings accounts, CDs, things like that, they have fixed interest rates. So it might be 1% or 2%, right? And you can very quickly kind of do a calculation, and Tori and I can help you do a calculation of, you know, if I want to have $10,000 in 5 years and I'm starting with 0, how much do I need to save on a monthly basis if I'm getting 2% return, right? And so we can do that calculation, kind of help you determine what those numbers are. Some rates of return, we have to do our best estimates, right? So for example, with the stock market, it can fluctuate very much, you know, every year. But we typically use a long-term average rate on the conservative side of about 8% when we're looking at a long-term, thinking 15, 20 years or more stock market investment. So sometimes you have to make kind of your own projections when it comes to rate of return. My suggestion is usually just like be more conservative. Don't plan to get 20% return. If you do get 20% return, that will just be even better, but plan for the more conservative numbers, 8% or less as far as market returns there. So pretty much once you have these 3 factors, you can put together a real quick savings plan for pretty much any goal, right? So how long do you have to achieve it? How much you're going to start with? And then what's your rate of return? And we can actually work backwards to determine how much you need to save on a monthly basis in order to get there. So I think this is really important because this is like the quick way that you can like put together a plan to achieve little goals. And then Tori and I have the systems to actually like track these things online. So you can kind of like do these calculations and track your progress towards these goals over time there. So yeah, that's a big part of asset accumulation, showing a little bit about the value of investing. So this just shows what happens to different amounts of investments using that 8% kind of conservative stock market return. So I'd say this is something that is, if you're invested in a retirement account and you're invested for the long run, you're probably in a place where you can, project about 8% return on your investment. So this is a good idea of what a retirement account investment might look like. So starting with $100 a month at 8%, so this is growing at 8% per year. After 10 years of $100 a month, you would be at $18,128. If instead you had started with $300 a month, by year 10, you would be at $54,385. So, it's 3 times as much, but it does make a pretty significant difference over the long run there. And then as we start to look kind of further down, the effects of compounding interest start to grow more and more and more. So you can start to see, like, say you're starting really early, you're able to save $300 a month. By saving just $300 a month over the next 30 years, assuming you never increased it, you just left it at $300 per month, your account grows at 8% on average, you'd be at $425,000, which is, a pretty good chunk of change, right? But in SoCal, for retirement, oftentimes need to plan for even more than that. So just to show some of the power of compounding interest. Yeah. I think this one is interesting as well. This kind of shows you the cost of waiting when it comes to investing. So this is somebody who has a goal of reaching $100,000, in the next 18 years. So basically, if I started right now and I wanted to achieve my goal in year 18 of $100,000, I could either start saving $206 per month, or I could put down a lump sum of about $25,000 and then do nothing, right? So $206 a month might not be too hard on my budget. Sounds very reasonable, and I would be able to hit my goal of $100,000 in year 18. However, if I wait, you start to see that you start having to be a little bit more aggressive with your savings. So let's say, I put it off about 5 or 6 years or so, right? So I still have the same goal. Now I want to, get to 100,000 in 12 years, right? But in order to do that, I have to save pretty much twice as much per month. So $407 per month, or I could put down about $40,000. So by not starting earlier, I'm basically costing myself a little bit more today. I have to do a little bit more today, right? And it becomes quite a bit more extreme where all of a sudden, if we're doing some last minute planning, I need to have 100,000 by the next 3 years. So I'm starting in year 15. Now all of a sudden I have to do $2,377 per month or $80,000 all at once. So 2,300, is a pretty big strain on a monthly budget, where, if you thought ahead, you could have done the same thing for about $200 a month. So this just shows some of the reason why, starting earlier is better and can save you. Basically, it'd be nice to get to this point and you're locked in at $206 per month, and you can use your budget for, other fun things, buying vacations, rental properties, that type of stuff. As far as the different types of accounts that you can choose to save into, all different types of investment accounts out there, but all of them are going to fall into one of these 3 different categories: taxable, tax-free, or tax-deferred. Taxable accounts are kind of like our normal accounts. So checkings accounts, savings accounts, if you have any brokerage investment accounts where you're just buying stocks, bonds, etc., those are all going to be taxable accounts. And the way a taxable account works is that the money obviously is inside of the account on an after-tax basis, and then you typically have to pay taxes on your growth, right? So that's where you hear about capital gains tax, taxes on your interest. It's like why even if you have a savings account where maybe it earned a couple pennies for the year, there's a tax form associated with it, right? It's because you have to report your gains for taxable accounts. Tax-free accounts, I'd say these are my favorite type of accounts, are accounts where the money goes in on an after-tax basis, meaning it doesn't save you any money on taxes today, but once the money is inside of the account, it grows 100% tax-free. So you don't have to worry about capital gains tax, taxes on the interest, and you don't even have to worry about taxes on the back end when you take the money out, right? So it's truly get your taxes out of the way now and never have to worry about taxes again. And so the most common types of vehicles there are Roth IRA, the cash value and life insurance, and then municipal bonds, which are a special type of bonds that are basically created by the state of California, where they pay interest, but because we're residents of California, it's federal and state tax-free to us as well. So it's kind of hard to find tax-free growth. They're kind of Roth IRA, they have income limits. If you make too much, you can't add to it. So if you're able to get tax-free, investments in your plan, I think that's always, really valuable part of the plan. And this is also where, for example, the Roth 403B options, if you decide to add to your 403B on a Roth basis, that's going to be a tax-free account as well, just like the Roth IRA. So yes, go for it.
The income ceiling on the Roth or
Do you know where it's?
There's none.
Yeah.
There's
Oh
none.
yeah, for 403B is none. For IRA, do you know where it's at now?
It's 220 for married and 140 for single.
That's for Roth
Highly
IRA. And then for Roth 401k, there's no limit. So anybody participating in the plan can choose Roth. And then tax deferred is going to be more like kind of like the classic retirement account. The way a tax deferred account works is you add money to the account and that amount is tax deductible. So it actually saves you some money on taxes in the current year. Once the money is inside of the account, it grows tax deferred. So that means no capital gains tax, no tax on your interest or anything like that. But when you get to typically retirement and you're taking that money out, it's going to be taxable at that time. So say you're retired, you want to take $10,000 from your 403B for a vacation, you would have to add that $10,000 to your taxable income for that year. So this is the best account if your main goal is to save money on taxes today and you're willing to kind of bite the bullet later down the road. So in many cases, especially in situations where maybe you don't have a lot of deductions or write-offs, it might make sense to add a lot to a tax deferred account to bring your current taxable income down. Just note that you are going to have to pay the taxes at some point, and it's usually later down the road in the back end. Kind of the decision between the two, that's something Tori and I can definitely help you decide. If you're kind of on the fence, I usually lean towards the tax-free option because we don't know what taxes are going to look like in 20 years. Historically, if you look historically, taxes have been raised over time. So I like the idea of getting my taxes out of the way now and not leaving it up to chance to see what taxes look like later down the road. But again, completely depends on individual situation.
I have a question.
Of course.
Of the kinds of accounts that are in our principal offering,
Mhm.
I don't know how to ask it the right way, but do any of them have ages where you have to start taking money out, like you're required to?
Good question. Good question. So tax deferred accounts, so traditional 401k, traditional 403b, so not the Roth 403b, but if you did the traditional 403b and traditional IRAs, they have what are called required minimum distributions, and those start on the April after you turn age 72. So basically it gets to the point where the government says, we haven't seen any taxation on this money. You're 72, you're probably retired by now. It's a retirement account. We're going to start making you pull some of the money out so that you start to pay, some of your taxes on it as well. And so starting then, it'll be a certain percentage, say around 4% or so of your account that they'll make you pull out. But then that amount will continue to increase over the years until you've depleted the account. So sometimes that can be a downside of saving to these accounts. Like we have a lot of clients that are teachers and they have a pretty big pension. And so sometimes they'll, even though they have a big pension, they'll save a lot until they're into their 403B, and then they'll retire and they'll get their pension and they realize they don't really need the money inside of their 403B as much. And usually it ends up becoming kind of a tax nightmare, because that money is just sitting there in the traditional IRA. And then when required minimum distributions come, it forces you to take more out than you want to, and usually can cause you to like jump into higher tax brackets, unwanted stuff there. So it's important to plan so that you also don't end up with a situation where you have too much sitting in the tax deferred accounts and then the required minimum distributions hurt you from a tax perspective.
Although it is a good problem to have.
It's a good problem, but it is, but with planning can be avoided.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just read an interesting article about people who inherited the tax deferred from their parents.
Yeah.
And they were forcing
Mhm.
them to take it out on the
Yes.
minimum schedule of their parents' ages.
Mhm.
And then they had this tax nightmare.
Yes.
So they didn't really have.
Yeah, that's the tricky thing about those distributions is even if the person passes away that's taking the distribution, the beneficiary now has the distributions in it. Oftentimes people, when they inherit money, it's like when they're in their higher earning years and unwanted, tax bracket situation. The current rule now with inherited accounts is they now have a 10-year rule where if you inherit a tax deferred account from a non-spouse, then you have 10 years to take everything out of the account. So it's up to you if you want to do it all at once or spread it over the 10 years. That's a new rule they just added like 2 years ago. So these are all the different types of accounts. Traditional retirement accounts. So if you're adding to your traditional 403B, that's a tax deferred account. If you're adding to your Roth 403B, that's tax free. If you're doing your own kind of investments on the side, that's taxable account there.
And that also includes like Bitcoin,
Mhm.
TD Ameritrade, if you have your own like brokerage account, the accounts like that.
And yeah, Tori and I have access to help you start up all of those different types of accounts, so we can kind of help you match with what type makes the most sense for you.
Not the Bitcoin one.
Not the
That one's on your.
Yeah.
About Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Go ahead, go for it.
Since it's decentralized, how does the government know that you even are holding it?
So they honestly might not know, but if you cash it out and you add $100,000 to your bank account, anything over $10,000 going into a bank account can be reviewed. So as long as you keep it in Bitcoin forever, then at this point,
Don't report anything.
yeah, and you don't report anything, but technically that would be tax evasion. So
Keep it in your
just
interest.
hopefully they don't.
Don't
get
get
audited.
to your overseas account. Essentially has digital pay stubs and it'll ask you for that when you do your taxes. So it does keep track of it if you buy it from an app. So it's
Yeah, that makes sense. Like the big apps probably have to report it. Kind of like with an investment company, whether you report it or not, the investment company sends your gains to the IRS. It's probably the same way for the more legitimate like Coinbase type companies there. Yeah, good question.
They know everything.
I'm sure, exactly. I wouldn't risk it. It's probably not, yeah.
Opt out of like government.
Yeah, no, not necessarily. Yeah. So last step here, and this one I'll kind of go through relatively quickly, is kind of once we have those other things figured out, we have our cash savings, we have our asset accumulation strategy, we have those plans in place. Usually just the last step is wealth transfer, making sure that what we've built up over our life transfers over to either the next generation, charities, whatever you want to do, but so that happens in the way that you want to. And so that you don't leave behind, a lot of like confusion and potential fighting and all that stuff. And also so that you don't lose out on too much to Uncle Sam as well. I'd say the main things that you can do kind of to prepare for wealth transfer is getting these three things here: will, power of attorney, healthcare proxy, and then kind of trust kind of encompasses all of those things. So those three, or a trust with an estate attorney. I think it's important for everybody, but is especially important for those that have beneficiaries, right? So if you have, spouse, kids, grandparents living with you, that type of stuff, that becomes especially important. It's also important for anyone who owns property, because when it comes to like investment accounts, like your retirement accounts, Those always have beneficiaries listed. So if God forbid something happened, they go to the right place. But homes, property, deeds, there's no beneficiaries on those. So if you don't, have that figured out, then you leave it up to like a judge to figure that out. And, nobody necessarily wants that. Yeah.
And I've been told that even if you have a will, you still have to go through
Correct.
probate,
Mhm.
and having a trust avoids some of that for people who are really looking into it.
Correct.
That's correct, yeah.
Correct. Like I could make a will, like I could write something down right here and sign my name, and technically that would be a will. But the will would go into the probate process, and the probate judge would determine whether that will was valid, and they might not, they might, it still goes through the probate process. Trust basically does all the legal work before it ever gets into the probate process. So a will is like kind of like the bare minimum, like you should have a will, but definitely would recommend having a trust. Depending on, like, you could go kind of the discount option and go kind of like LegalZoom, kind of creating your own trust, but kind of at your own risk, right? Because you're really, it's kind of like doing your taxes on TurboTax. You can definitely do it well, but it's on you if you made any mistakes, right? Or you can hire an estate attorney, and that will be a little bit more expensive, but then it's a real person, a team of people, professionals that have done this for years and years and years and aren't making mistakes.
I was gonna ask, on average, how much does it cost to set up a trust?
Yeah, so I would say if you go LegalZoom route, you're talking like a couple hundred potentially. A full service estate attorney will probably be 2,000 to 3,000. Yeah, which is it's kind of it's a lot up front, but typically in probate, if you don't do a trust, you'll lose about 5 or 6% of the total assets to lawyer fees. So let's say you pass down $1 million, right? That's $50,000 in fees for legal fees. So that's much greater than the $3,000 that you could spend up front to
Taxes
get it
as
out of
well,
the way.
right? So that if you don't have it, if it's a will compared to a trust, then you pass down and you get taxed if it's not.
So it's taxation actually won't really matter too much, whether it's in a trust or anything like that. The taxation more so depends on like the type of
I saw it
account.
on TikTok and TikTok. He doesn't have TikTok, so.
Yeah, but an estate attorney who's
Hi.
the one who would help you with the trust will also usually help you strategize so that you're not paying a lot of taxes as well.
I just saw it yesterday too. It says, if you have a property, don't leave it to your kids on a will, leave it in a trust because this. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I mean, the general message is 100% correct.
TikTok is
Yeah.
looking at your calendar. They knew you were gonna.
I know, they were like, let's see what she's doing. Let's see what kind of questions she's gonna ask tomorrow.
Yeah.
Let's say a person doesn't have a trust, doesn't have a will,
Mhm.
doesn't have anything, but has shared bank accounts. If
Mhm.
if that person dies and the other person's already on the account, does the government still take that money, or does it all go to the other person?
Yeah, so it depends on the type of joint account that you set up, but most of them it's called joint account with rights of survivorship. That's the most common type. And then if you have that type, if you passed away, everything would go to the other owner of the account. So it would just switch to a single account and everything would go to them. But there's also a type of account called, I want to call it tenants in common or something like that, where it's basically a joint account, but you each have like however much you added, that's how much like stake you have inside of the account. So if that were the case, then your half of it would go to your estate, and they would have their own individual account with just the half that was their half. Most likely you have the prior. That's the more. Yeah.
And then for the trust, like if you're a homeowner, it doesn't need to be paid off completely, right? You can
No.
do it even while you're still paying your mortgage.
Correct. It's just basically, yeah, it's just, the trust is like, I like to think of it as like a bottle where the bottle has like instructions on it of what is going to happen with the stuff in the bottle. And then you put all of your assets in the bottle, right? Like you put your life insurance policy, your 401k, your home, your car, like whatever, all of your instructions, and then you seal the bottle and, when you pass away, that's basically the instructions or what the legal process is used to distribute everything inside of the bottle. Yeah.
I mean, I guess no one knows,
Mhm.
right? Like,
Mhm.
do people normally set up a trust like when they're 60?
Mhm.
Or like, because if you set it up too early, there's gonna be changes down the line, right? And then
Right.
I'm assuming there's more legal fees to go in
Potentially.
there and be like, oh, I wanna change X, Y, Z. So
Mhm.
that's not really, it's just an out loud.
Yeah, I mean, there's no like perfect time to get it. I'd say in reality, most people do think about it in their like 50s and 60s. And by that point, it's like, oh, you should have already had a trust for the last, several years. But for me, like when I'm advising my clients, I'm telling everybody that they should look into it, but anyone who has a beneficiary or property that doesn't have a listed beneficiary on it, that's like a trigger, like you really should get a trust. If you don't have any of those things, still, could be a good idea, but it's probably not necessary yet. But I'd say once those two things are true, it becomes necessary. And also, if you have, the more assets you have as well, the more necessary it becomes. Because yeah, if you don't have too much to your name yet, then it might not be worth the $2,000 of an investment to delineate it. But if you do, then it might be more worth your time and money. Yeah. Question. Cool. Yes. All right, cool. So that's pretty much it for kind of the presentation anyway. Just wanted to leave you with kind of all of your different resources when it comes to us, and then also your 403B. So main resource, if you have any questions, I'd say start with our website. So toriandalex.soteriainvestors.com. Again, the QR code is on the flyer inside your guys' sheets. And for us, you can use this for general 403B questions. It could be, I set up my contributions, did it go through? Or I want to see, how my fund that I picked is doing. Anything like that, use us for any general 403B questions. But we also really recommend you using us for kind of your full financial planning. So start thinking about, what goals you have, whether it's, to buy your first home, maybe go back to school, maybe buy a rental property, maybe retire. And we can actually help you put together like the numbers and the implementation to actually, improve your chances of achieving that goal. So definitely utilize us for financial planning. All you have to do is click the big yellow schedule a meeting button on our website, and basically it'll couple clicks of a button and you can schedule a Zoom review with us. So pretty easy there. We also have access to all of our different planning calculators. So we mentioned a lot today, but any types of, anytime you're doing your own planning and you run into difficulty on the calculation side of things, reach out to us, because that's pretty much what we do on a daily basis. And then obviously our newsletter, which you'll continue to get. And then if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, would recommend checking that out. Subscribe. We post about a new video every month or so. And we actually have this financial wellness workshop. We have an online version on YouTube already there if you want to review any of this info. And then principal, you should have already basically gotten this education kit from Abby when we started the plan or when you started. But that has pretty much everything you need about the principal plan inside of it. We have access to an enrollment flyer, an account access form, a rollover form, and a beneficiary form. If you need any of those for any reason, just let me know and we can get you access to those forms. But pretty much all the information that you should need is in the Junior Achievement Education Kit. It has the details, all of your different investment options, and even has a risk tolerance questionnaire if you want to go through that, to determine if you should be moderate, moderately aggressive, etc. And then principals online, so that principal.com/welcome, that's kind of like the starting point. If you haven't signed up already, you can go to principal.com/welcome and you can sign up for the 403B, set your contribution level, etc. there. So yeah, without further ado, that's pretty much.
Thank you so much for your time and your participation. It's been great to be with you all. So thank you. Yeah. Folder, yeah. Oh yeah.
No, so I did meet from that, and I met with her about like insurance. Okay, because I felt like I went with her and I was like, oh, well,
Yeah,
so,
and you have to be really careful.
her face is very dirty. I feel like that's just gonna basically be your diet. Like holidays generally, but I guess this is just one thing on our policy that didn't say that it was a lump sum. So we didn't catch that. So.
Okay.
So you can have that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was confused. I saw the outline.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess,
Yeah, that's what it was.
I don't know, I didn't pay attention, again, we did the whole lessons.
I think it'll
another
be
friend
similar.
years ago.
Mhm.
Again, but yeah, another different friend, like, please, because they wanted, you know, she
Thank you so much.
State Farm, she couldn't do our cars. 'cause
Did
we
you get
were
the BLT
bad.
also?
No, I got, it was
Yeah.
close, I got like a
So,
turkey
she's
avocado.
like,
burger.
Thank you so much.
Of course, thanks for stopping by.
On life insurance and.
Yeah, so we'll get in contact with you about the next one.
Some, but then now switching over.
We have this physical trainer
The
that we've
amount
been
will
working
go
with.
up.
She's like super tired,
Double,
super
yeah.
fun,
Like,
and
I think for him,
she might do like
14 and
nutrition in the workplace or like something
a month.
like along those lines.
Yeah.
So you gotta put that on the
And
schedule.
it's the same amount, just five
How's
more years.
everything been going on?
So,
there?
I don't know, I
Administration
was
side
kind of
of-
like, before we even,
With like.
right now, they're,
The only
it's
thing I
not
would
signed up
say
yet.
is,
Yeah.
I think we're not signing up right now.
New Year in January.
Well, they haven't even done the medical stuff, so
Oh, yeah.
we're not.
I wanna
supposed
make
do them
it
until
so
the end of the
that,
month.
Mhm.
But people can
Did you stop
change.
your state farm already?
No,
Whenever
I
they
didn't.
know.
No, I didn't.
I find that I'll see notices and they'll make small changes.
But yeah, so that was my question, like, what are your,
almost
like,
rather
Like, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Because if I
Is it-
just go into.
I don't know,
I
don't know,
You
I've
know, the
had such
website.
mixed
by the
reviews,
time
like,
that
my
we're
parents said
done,
to make it because I am with
live,
you, so I'm
It's
really
not like
kind
too
of
much of
clear
a
out,
hassle.
so I mean,
I have to.
I need to know how.
I'm sure that's something that,
Yeah,
like Nova and principal can just like a couple clicks of a button.
Last year, they
follow.
said you could change
Which
it
is
the
good
next year, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
now-
Yeah, and as the end of the year approaches, I'm sure we'll get like
Um,
annual
yeah.
plan reviews on the schedule. and things like that.
The worker,
But you're for the most part. Most-
people, the kind
Yeah,
of
yeah, I really like
agents
it.
are instant. It's like, or
Yeah,
doing
that's how I
the-
see it.
I'll send out a couple of the different topics
Yeah,
and you can ask
maybe
around
pyramid
and find
see if
which
it's
one.
not.
Right, right. That's what I've heard. I mean, I haven't had
Yeah.
any sort of experience. I have seen people that have
I know, that's what I'm saying, like.
Well,
great to see you. Take care. So Alex, the other Alex ate your sandwich.
I know, he told me, but we figured it out. We're good.
Sorry.
Yeah, it was, the orders were somewhat similar, so
Oh,
it's
okay.
okay, yeah.
Said yours has meat. And then I was like, didn't you notice when you were eating it that yours had no meat? And he's like, I knew something was off, like. Same thing. Yeah, so that was my question before we pull the plug on. Like, I mean, if State Farm, if it is true and State Farm, there is some kind of clause in it that says that they're not gonna give this to us, and I mean, I just kind of went with the flow of things. I told her just, you know, go sign us up kind of thing, but I never read it.
Yeah,
Just assumed she knew what she was doing.
yeah. Do you have the original State Farm statement?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you
Yeah,
send,
I have the
maybe send me
policy.
like a picture of the front or something like that, or send me the file,
Okay,
like if you
yeah.
have a PDF.
I mean, I have the whole policy.
Oh, you
I
do?
can
Okay.
send it to you if you want to.
Okay.
Yeah, but,
I'll send you a secure email link. So that you
Okay.
can upload it.
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah.
It'll be encrypted, but.
and then I just never followed up with you regarding, I never finished my sign up, so,
Mhm, mhm.
I guess I'll just do it now.
Yeah, we'll do that, yeah. And then maybe send the primary policy too, just for me to look over.
Yeah.
'Cause it might be fine if you want 5 more years of coverage,
Yeah,
you know, and the.
But it just- if I can save that money and put it somewhere else, then it's almost $100 and something more, because he's a smoker, that's what you're saying.
Okay, okay.
And he has a motorcycle, and he, you know, so it's like all these like different
More
little
of a
things, like, he's a higher risk, yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
So that's why I was kind of like, okay, fine, maybe it's okay, because you are, you know, prone to getting hurt and you smoke
Yeah.
and, you know, so,
Yeah,
but
yeah, just
Either
send
way,
this to
I'll
over to me,
review
and I'll see if they
Okay.
like fit. Yeah,
sounds good.
okay. Good to see you.
Good to see you. You good?
All good?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're good here.
We're
Yep.
gonna want TikTok soon.
I know.
I know.
Do your little video.
We actually should
Yeah.
probably do that.
I think just the overall question I had was just kind of unclear, was like, I know this is provided by JA,
Yeah,
say people leave JA,
yeah.
Mhm.
it's, your services are no longer included as an employee, but then what? You know,
So.
It depends.
It
Yeah, so,
depends on how much, so usually the way our services work is if you have over 200 grand, the cost to work with us is incorporated into the management fees. that's assessed quarterly, and usually that quarterly fee is 0.1%, which is 1.25 per year, if you have between 200 and 500. If you have less than that, then it is $100 a month. So it depends if you want to continue working with us, but it's like dependent on how you want to work with us if you wish to retire or leave. You can continue that relationship if you wanted to with $100 a month subscription style for advice. Or not. Yeah, it's up to you at that point.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we're usually, we can make it work.
Yeah,
we'll make it work,
we'll
yeah.
figure it out.
Mhm,
Okay,
mhm.
perfect.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Thank
see ya.
you.
See you too.